This is a $1 Pokemon card and this is a $30 Pokemon card. But what is actually the difference? Because they're exactly the same card except that this one is in a plastic case. And yes, that's actually the only difference, except that this also says a PSA 10. If you didn't know it yet, this is called grading. You basically send your card to a company like PSA who checks the quality of your card, and if it's in perfect condition, you get a PSA 10. And grading is probably the most fun, easy and most profitable way to make money with Pokemon cards. For example, if you're gonna take a look at this Mega Charizard card from Evolutions. Ungraded, this card is worth around $100. But if you would send it to PSA and you would actually get a PSA 10, this card is worth around $700. Now there's actually a really nice website that shows you the odds of you getting a PSA 10. And it's called tcgfish.com. And I'm actually not sponsored by this website, but it's just an amazing tool to use to actually grade cards. If you're gonna take a look at this Mega Charizard card once again, you can see that you have a 58% chance of getting a PSA 10 on the card. And that basically means that if you would open an Evolutions booster pack and you would get this card and you would send it directly to PSA, you would have a chance of 58% to get a PSA 10. They also show you the PSA 9 to PSA 10 ratio, which in this case is going to be 0.7 to 1. And TCG Fish says that this is quite an easy card to grade. Now in a bit I'm going to give you a couple of example cards who are quite easy to grade and are actually really valuable in the PSA 10. But I'll talk more about that later in this video. But first we have to figure out where you need to pay attention to actually get a good grade on a card. And that's actually quite simple, because there are 3 things that you actually need to pay attention to. First up, you need to check for whitening or some kind of damage on the back of the card. And this is the easiest to spot if you put the card on a black background. Next up, it's also really important to focus on the centering of a card. And the simplest way to explain what centering is the amount of yellow on the top and bottom and on the side of the cards. The amount of yellow on the borders has to be close to exactly the same in order for you to get a PSA 10. And the centering is actually based on the print quality from Pokemon. So there's also a shot that you get an off-center card from a booster pack. And if the card is off-center, you can actually get a PSA 9 instead of a 10, even though the rest of the card is in perfect condition. Now the maximum difference with PSA is going to be 55 to 45, which means that you can have a maximum difference of 5% on the side to side and top to bottom of the card. However, if you're gonna grade with CGC or Beckett, it has to be perfectly 50-50 if you want to get a pristine 10 or a black label 10, because CGC and Beckett actually use subgrades. If you want a perfect 10, all of these subgrades need to have a 10. However, if all these subgrades get a 10 but the centering gets a 9.5, you will still actually get a 10. But with Beckett and CGC, that's not a pristine or black label 10, that's just a regular 10. And the value between these two can be really big. But before we continue, I just want to say that I created an ebook you can download completely for free in the description. It teaches you all the basics about Pokemon card investing and also about grading. And it doesn't matter if you have a lot of experience already or none at all, this ebook contains a lot of valuable information completely for free. So make sure to check it in the description. Next thing that you have to pay attention to are going to be print lines and scratches on the card. The easiest way for you to check if your card has print lines or scratches on the card is just by using a flashlight. And if you actually do this, you can see it very easily. And I'm sorry if I blinded you. Because knowing how to find Pokemon cards that are in great condition is quite easy, but actually knowing where to find them is where it gets difficult. There are actually 3 places that in my opinion are the easiest way to find great condition cards. And the first one, which is probably going to be the best option, are going to be at conventions. Especially if you show up to conventions early, you have a really high shot at finding some cards that are in great condition. And the best part is that at conventions you can see the cards in real life, which makes it so much easier to determine if the card can actually get a PSA 10. Because you can also use the second method, which is going to be TCG Player Card Market or Facebook Marketplace. But the problem with this is that you can't see the cards in real life. However, if you do decide to buy cards from platforms like these, make sure to always ask for pictures on a black background, because that makes it way easier to spot any whitening or damage on the card. And the last way to find cards that are in great condition is from your own collection. And this may sound very strange, but it's actually a really effective method to find great cards. In the past couple of years, I've opened a lot of packs, and honestly, I haven't really paid attention to the hits I've got, especially not to the smaller ones. And when I was writing the script for this video, I actually found a couple of cards that are in really good condition and have a really high shot at getting a PSA 10. And the most interesting one is going to be this Mega Rayquaza EX from Celebrations, because this card ungraded is worth around $28, but in a PSA 10 it's worth over $200, which is an incredible difference. And actually I'm going to explain a little bit more about this card later on in the video. But now we're actually going to move on to a very valuable part, because I managed to find 4 cards that are really easy to grade and are really expensive in a PSA 10. And the first card that we're going to be looking at is this Mewtwo EX from Celebrations. This card is very easy to grade since you have a 72% chance of getting a PSA 10 on it, which means if you would grade 10 cards, you would probably get 7 PSA 10s. This card is worth around $8 ungraded, but in a PSA 10 it's worth $62. $10. And if you keep in mind how easy this card is to grade, you can make a lot of profit on this card, especially if you buy a bunch of them. The next card that we're going to be looking at, which is actually really easy to grade, is going to be the Surfing Pikachu VMAX card, also from Celebrations, because this card has an 81% chance at a PSA 10. Now, this card is worth around $4 ungraded, which is really cheap, but in a PSA 10 it goes for around $55, because you can actually buy 100 of these Surfing Pikachus for only $400, which is incredible. Now imagine for a second if you would send all of these 100 cards to PSA, and 90 of them would actually get a PSA 10. If we're quickly gonna do the math, 55 times 90 is $4,950 only already for the PSA 10s. Of course, you also have to keep in mind that there are grading fees, but still, you would make a huge profit. So this card is an awesome opportunity to grade. And the next card that we're going to talk about is going to be this Mega Rayquaza EX from Celebrations that I showed you earlier in this video, which is just insane. This card has a 84% chance at a PSA 10. However, like I showed you earlier, this is a $28 card, but in a PSA 10 it goes for over $210. Now, since this card is pretty easy to actually grade, this is an awesome opportunity to actually grade these cards, especially if you would buy them in bulk. And the last card that we're going to be talking about is actually a really cheap Charizard card, because the next card we're going to talk about is going to be this Radiant Charizard card from Pokemon Go. This card is also pretty easy to grade because it has a 64% chance at the PSA 10. This card is worth around $11 ungraded, and in the PSA 10 it's worth $71. So again, if you would do the math on this card, you can actually make a whole lot of profit. Now, the last thing that I wanted to say is make sure that you grade cards that you actually like yourself, because that makes the whole process of grading just so much more fun. And it's a true blessing that you can make money with this hobby. But remember, it's also about having fun. Now, if you want to learn more about Pokemon cards and how you can make money with them, I highly recommend to check out my Pokemon card investing course, because it teaches you step by step how you can start investing in Pokemon cards and actually start making money. And it doesn't contain any nonsense, it's actually focused on helping you. I've been in the Pokemon card world for over 10 years now, and I created this course based on my experience. So if all of this sounds interesting to you, make sure to check the Pokemon card investing course in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye bye.